Good afternoon. We're going to talk to you about our trip to Zambia, and
It's going in and out, isn't it?
so it sounds like it's going in and out to us, but maybe to you. So anyway, we're going to talk to you about our trip to Zambia and what we were. I turned my head because I usually have like I turn my head.
Oh,
So
okay, so you're doing it.
yeah, so I'm doing it. So we went to Zambia, and we were. I'm just going to get a wireless because I'm not.
It is cutting in and out though, I think.
No, it's only turn my head.
It really is.
Yeah, because I'm gonna turn my head. And this turns with me. So it's gonna break up the lines of the shirt, though. So that's. Okay, so is this on? Yeah, so that's better. So I can turn my head. So we were in Zambia, as you know, and many of you helped get us there. And we thank you for the support for that. We're going to talk about what we did there and some of the things that we learned and some of the opportunities you have to help support the ministry there. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So the first church we went to was the Ndola churches. There are actually we were two churches, I believe, right? So and we were there right after we got off the plane, so it's kind of fuzzy. So there was we were kind of tired, but the only other opportunity we had was Saturday morning. We did not have time because of our flight to to stop Saturday morning. So we went ahead, and even though we were tired, we landed in Ndola. So we just were greeted by a choir, and hand clapping, and then got on a bus and went to.
After we told them we weren't there for doing missionary work, they agreed.
Yes, so we got there, they're like, are you here doing missionary work? Oh, no, we're not doing missionary work. We walk out, and there's this big line of people singing Jesus songs to us, and us getting a bus. So a little awkward, but they didn't pay attention. They wanted the $50, they got it. So anyway, we went and looked at the different vocational projects they have at Ndola, which include sewing, apparently carpentry, although we did not see carpentry, and then raising broiler chickens on the property. So we'll look at that. So go ahead and. So there are your broiler chickens. They had two buildings. They started out with chicks, which got to be they raised them to poults, and they took the young chickens and they put them in the next building, and then the building after that was an axe. So they raise them, and then they slaughter them and sell them. So they use them to feed themselves as well. But there's quite a few chickens there, and then they go to the next building over. So.
And they have vocational projects because there are not a lot of jobs in Zambia for people. The good jobs are outsourced to the Chinese companies, which are doing the roads, and to who's doing the.
I think the Dutch are using to do the copper.
Somebody's doing copper, but they're not offering jobs to the
Zambians.
Zambians. So a lot of them are. This one, I was right.
You're moving your head too. So anyway, so the people in the churches in Ndola and Kitwe and Lufwanyama and Solway, they have to support themselves. They have to have jobs that they can basically be self-employed because there's not a lot of work there outside the copper mines, and they're oftentimes don't use Zambians to do the work except for the dirty work and actually digging the copper. So there's not many of them have jobs working in the copper industry. So they're all looking for ways to support themselves apart from that. So you can go to the next slide. So, and this is a sewing and knitting. They have actually a knitting machine and a sewing machine, and you can't see it well here, but that sewing machine is run by a hand crank. So they turn it by hand, and they feed it with the other hand. So.
It goes with the old treadles.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had some treadle machines too.
They have some treadle machines, but they have some hand crank machines, and they're singers. They're built like tanks. So anyway, so that's what they use, and you can see the knitting machine in the background. It's an old knitting machine that they've gotten working, and they use it to make sweaters for school uniforms and other things. But they also do a lot of sewing, and this was made in Ndola. This is the colors of the Zambian flag. The Zambian flag actually looks like that. So, but this is fabric that has a Zambian flag on it, and I didn't see any flowers like this in Zambia, but I don't know. So maybe there are. But so that's sewing and knitting. Anything you want to say about that?
Nope.
And can you guess what those are? So you're right. So those are bricks, and they make their own bricks. And they we showed a little bit of them, they have a big pile of them, and they're making more all the time, because one of the things that they've been told by the government is the government gives them plots of land, and they have to develop the land, and they also have to wall the land off. So that's kind of a new rule, I think. So they've been trying to build walls around the property they've been given. And if they don't build it quickly enough, or don't develop the land quickly enough, somebody else gets it. And in fact, Ndola has already lost a plot to a mosque, which is immediately next door. It was given to them. So they've already lost a chunk of their property, and so now they're trying as quickly as they can to build the walls. And they make bricks, and they have the material for that, and they have most what they need for the mortar, but they need sand. And so we've asked the Missionary Society to maybe try to raise some money for them so they can, all the urban churches need sand. The rest of the mix for the mortar. And if they can get the sand together and build the brick walls quickly enough, then they won't lose any of their property. And they just have to really show progress. So they don't have to build it all at once. So they have to be able to, when the government comes back to look, they should have at least one more set of walls done so they can see that they're trying. So they're, so the only thing Ndola asked for really was help with purchasing the sand. So, because they need a lot of it. And it's not expensive. I forget, it was not very much money per ton or whatever, but they need tons and tons and tons. So it adds up to quite a bit.
So both churches in Ndola and
Yep.
the church in Kitwe, what we'll see at the end, both
Yes,
needed
both
sand.
need sand to build the walls. So so that's the bricks they make. They use a mold and they just make it. And this is Lufwanyama. You can go to Lufwanyama. So that was the Tuesday. So we went to Lufwanyama, and that's we went to, this is the government school. Well, that's okay. This is the government school, and they meet in the government school, and the government just assumed they didn't do that. So they're looking for, they have property they want to develop, but they haven't done it yet. But right now they're using the school buildings that are in Lufwanyama, because they're not used on Saturday anyway, so they're using them for their stuff. But they have various vocational projects, chickens, carpentry,
But there's
truck garden.
6 or 7 churches in
Yes,
this
there are
region.
quite a lot in that region. So,
And this is out in the bush.
yeah. And so while we were there, Ellen did her Bible study, and I did a Bible study / sermon. And then the second session we met together because Ellen was talking about how husbands and wives should treat each other, and the wives liked it so much they wanted the husbands to come hear it. So they had the husbands come back in. Ellen also discovered, as I did, that when you have an interpreter, you're a much better speaker than you think you are. So, because they'll go for 5 minutes, you say a sentence, so they'll go on and on. But they're much more animated, and they're telling jokes, and people are laughing. You're like, wow, I'm really good at this. So, anyway, it was good, and so that's and you can see that silver truck there. That was actually, it belongs to the orphanage. Seventh-day Baptists no longer have a vehicle that's suitable for going into the bush, so they've asked for no money. They would like people to pray that they'll figure out a way to provide a vehicle for themselves. They would like to be able to purchase a four-wheel drive truck at some point, and maybe even a bus, because they do a lot of stuff centrally in Bucci, and it'd be good to be able to pick up people and take them there instead of buying them all bus tickets. But especially a four-wheel drive truck so they can get from place to place. But again, they don't expect any money for that. He was very clear about that. They don't think we'll buy them a truck. They just were hoping we'd pray with them that they'd figure out a way to eventually supply enough money to purchase one for themselves.
Well, and
So,
they use all right-side drive trucks too. So,
Yeah,
like,
we
we couldn't even send them a used vehicle because it'd be the wrong kind.
what would that cost? I mean, it
I
cost
have
us
no
$70
idea.
to send a box this big that weighed 7 pounds. I don't know what it costs in a truck. So anyway, so that's so we did Bible studies there. And you can go on to the next slide. We'll start showing some of the stuff that we saw. There's a school room. That's actually, I think, a typical government school room. This is one of the finished buildings. The government built 2 or 3 or 4 buildings, but they only got 1 or 2 of them done. Most of them are.
Automatic? Then we downloaded the wrong one.
No, it goes to the next row, then I just have to hit back.
Okay.
Okay, so anyway, so this is, so they're the ladies, I believe, were being taught, and Ellen did the teaching, and you can talk about that if you want to, so.
Basically, the message that we gave consistently to the women and to the men when we joined them was who God made us as women, which was essentially that we are made in God's image and our job is to image God, who God made us as wives and what those roles and responsibilities are, and who God made us as believers in Christ. And pretty regularly, the men would join us by the believers part, and then we would do that together. Oftentimes, it was clear in the women's and wives part that the women were doing what they were supposed to do, but the men were not, and they wanted Matt to clarify what the men's role in that part was. So we'd get to the part about submission, and they would often stand up and be very serious, and devout and say that we are to submit to our husbands, and then someone would say something, and all of a sudden they'd be cackling all over the room and high fives, and so I'm like, well, someone just told on their husband, I'm thinking. So it was an interesting mix of quiet people who were answering things exactly as they were supposed to, and then when they got comfortable, letting loose a little bit. Women in Zambia are responsible for cooking, cleaning, taking care of the children, in a lot of cases helping to earn money. Men have a lot more freedom to do what they want to do, and so in the home, they are somewhat oppressed, I would say at least, depending on who their husband is. You can marry more than one wife in Zambia. It's not illegal, but they're working on changing that. They're preaching, they don't have a lot of issues with that in the church. They're preaching one husband, one wife as much as they can. Leaders definitely one husband, one wife. So they have certain rules in the home, but in the church, they can't sit next to their husbands. There's women on one side, men on the other, but women pray, women teach. They let me teach men and women. They look to the older women for wisdom and guidance. The women are often leading the songs. The women were the ones that brought the gentleman who is getting ordained later in these slides in. So the women have a role in the church, except for sitting on opposite sides, but it doesn't necessarily translate into the home. It's kind of an odd juxtaposition. A lot of new versus old going on.
They're just a lot more liberated in the church. They're allowed to do a lot more in the church than they are in the culture in general. So, so you go to the next slide. And this is the chicken project. They were given 5 chickens by the Next Step Church in, it's not Denver.
Well, close.
Yeah, near Denver. So
Lakeview,
I think is
Colorado?
right. So something like that. So, but anyway, they were given 5 chickens, and since then they've raised it to, they have 65 chickens. They built the chicken coop that you see up there on the left, your left-hand side, right-hand side. So they built that chicken coop using the tools that we sent, because when we put the tools together, I don't know if you remember this or not, but we asked for hand tools for carpentry work or for making furniture and the like, and Ross Avery insisted on giving us every tool you would need to build a building. We thought it was kind of silly, but we packed it up and we shipped it off, and they've used every one of those tools to build coops and other things. So all the heavy saws he sent and carpenter squares and all the plumb lines and weird stuff that we thought no one had ever used to make furniture. They haven't used to make furniture, but they have used to build chicken coops. And so they've made their own chicken coop. It'll hold about 200 chickens. They're up to 65. And so we were very happy to be able to report back to the church in Denver that they actually took their gift, which is just 5 chickens, and ran with it. And have actually done even more than that with it. So you can go to the next slide. Oh, this is the carpentry project. You can see they make, their stuff is pretty rustic. It's kind of rustic furniture. It's not real, oh, go back. So it's not real, like you can see the drawers don't fit the openings. The drawers fit, but they don't have the drawers cut to the right size, that sort of thing. But it's very functional, very sturdy furniture, and it's sold to the people in that area who probably couldn't afford really nice furniture anyway. So, that's like a sideboard there, and that's like another like a secretary thing where you put in, store things, books, food, whatever, notes. But
And they were still working on the carpentry shred
yes,
when we were
and
there.
they work in a concrete building right now, which is behind them, which is very dark in there. So they actually are building themselves a large. That's half of it. The part where the roof is half, it goes another distance back. They're building themselves a large area to work with wood, and they'll build workbenches inside there, and it'll be done outdoors because it's got to be hotter than blazes in that.
And a lot of the young guys are doing this, and there's not a lot of mentoring, which is one of the things we talked about when we were in Kitway. We had an extra day, and so one of the Bible studies we did was on mentoring, because I think that people are busy surviving, and there's not a lot of the next generation. AIDS is still a big issue, and a lot of the young people that they have in the church who are in their 19s and 20s are orphans that have been raised in faith orphanage. So they don't have parents that can sit down and say, hey, maybe you should measure before you make a drawer. They just, figure it out as they go along.
If you see pictures of people who are in their teens or 20s, they're probably orphans. Almost certainly are orphans. They have no parents. So almost none of the people in these pictures who are younger have parents. They're almost all orphans because Faith Orphanage takes the kids who are older and teaches them a vocation so that when they're done, they will have something they can do to make a living once they're old enough to move out. So, but that's some of the carpentry work that they were doing, and that's the carpentry shop they were working on. This is the they call it a garden. We said, oh, come see our garden. We thought, oh, we'll go see this little plot. It is enormous. Can you go back? So you can see it's row after row after row of cabbage, row after row after row of eggplant, and that's the eggplant. We're probably about a third of the way into the garden, so there's a whole bunch more behind us you can't see, and it goes all the way down past the trees. And then if you look to the little brown thing I can't have a pointer, but that's a river. So they took some money that they made from raising chickens and bought seeds, and they cleared this huge plot of land by hand, and then they take the earth, they kind of dig it up and make a pile.
And the furrows are probably
So-
2.5, 3 foot tall.
Yeah, they're pretty tall, so it's hard to see the picture, but they're pretty tall. And they have curves to them, so they don't go straight. They kind of make like a wave, and then when the water comes down, it catches the water, because the water runs on the hill, and that's how they water it. But the thing that Lufwanyama asked us for help with, if it was at all possible, was to purchase a diesel pump that they would dig by hand ponds at the top, and they'd pump the water up to the top, and they could release it when it's not the rainy season, and they would be able to water the garden all year round, and then they could sell produce all year round. That was their hope, was to continually sell produce. The eggplant they grow because it bears. I didn't know that it bears continually, so you can pick it and just more will come. So they planted that because it's like staple, but it also, once you plant it, you can keep picking it until eventually it exhausts itself. But it goes for quite a while. And cabbage is a staple for their diet, so they grew quite a lot of cabbage. This is far more than they could ever eat. There's way more than they could use, but they'll sell it, and then they'll raise money to buy more seeds and to make the garden larger. It'll kind of feed itself, but they would like some help, if at all possible, with the diesel pump, which I think we've got. I think we have the first. They said they would need. When we were there, he thought it'd be about $400, but then I got a letter from him yesterday, and he said that he was mistaken. The $400 was for a petrol pump. I think it means a gas pump. And they were actually looking for a diesel pump, which is about twice as much money. But they've already pledged to take all the money they make from this particular crop and put that towards a diesel pump. So any help we can give them would be much appreciated. I think we already have, someone had already said they could give up to $400. So, but if you want to give to that, that's what we're looking to raise money for. So $5, $10, whatever you got. So, and we'll bundle that all together and get that to them. And I'm hoping sooner rather than later, because if it's not going to rain, which sounds like it hasn't been, then if they had it now, they could be irrigating their crop now, even though it's not raining. So, and in the not rainy season, people don't grow food, so they can make quite a bit more money even, because they'll have food they can sell, and there's places to sell food all along the roads. People just entrepreneurs just, and the government. This is illegal technically, but the government doesn't say anything to anybody. You can just, if you're making woodworking stuff, you can put it on the side of the road and have a little shop with a little hut by the side of the road and sell it, or you can. Everybody sells airtime minutes, or they sell produce or whatever, and so they can have a little stand and they can sell the stuff along the side of the highway and make money. So that's what Lufwanyama is doing, and except for the chickens, they receive nothing from anyone. They just did this all themselves. So and when I got there, Kristen asked me to preach about self-sufficiency. So everywhere I went, we talked about the idea of, the thing was, we do what we can, and we trust God to do what we cannot. And so talking about doing what they can, because oftentimes they don't think about the fact that the money they might need is already in their pockets. If they each gave a little bit, they could raise enough money to do something. They for a while especially, it was, you send us money and we'll do this. But Kristen Chow is the head of the conference. He's been trying to get them to see that they can do things on their own. They don't need people to pay their way every step of the way. They can get some help every now and then, but they don't need to. And they've built churches since we were there. They've done all kinds of stuff on their own, and he's been pushing and encouraging them to do that. So they'll build a church themselves. They'll pool their money and their time together, and they'll put up their own church building. And so he's been trying to push that message home. And they've really, and Lufwanyama especially, that really seemed to have sunk in and taken off, because they've done. And that I can't even.
And that community is dirt poor. They're living in huts with outdoor toilets.
Yeah.
They can't get.
So
They
their
would
huts
have
are.
to walk miles to get to a bus.
Yeah, some of them are grass even. I mean, they're like old style round wooden things with thatched huts. They're old. They don't have any. They're not living in a city by any means, but they have certainly done a lot with what little they have. And this was. It's just hard to explain the scope. It's just the scale is
Kristen was amazed.
Yeah, he didn't expect that.
He didn't expect
He
it.
was thinking a little garden too, because we walked quite a ways, and we got up to over the hill, and we're thinking, oh, this will be nice. There'll be a little garden. They'll have some corn. They'll have some squash. They'll have the usual stuff. And it was not a garden. It was huge. So, but yeah, very proud of them for all that hard work. And they did it all by hand. They have no power tools. They have no tractors. They have no plows. This is all, they have like an adze, like it's a little curved headed thing with a stick, and that's what they hack away at. So, and that's how they do it all. So, okay, next slide. Okay, this is Solwezi, which is kind of the sick man of Zambia. So they're probably the least, have caught on the least of the idea of doing things on their own. And this is where we got more requests than anywhere else, I think, for ridiculous help. Although never asked when Kristen was around, always asked off to the side. But they asked for some things that are not going to happen.
Well,
So,
and we put this picture up because I didn't take pictures of the roads when we were in Lufanwama because I was too busy holding on for dear life. But the roads on the way to Lufanwama were flooded, but this is what was underneath the flood. So this was not flooded, but you could see what the roads were looking like. So we got home, I got up the next day and I'm like, all of my legs are sore. Why are my legs sore and my arms sore? And I'm like, oh, maybe it's because I was holding on to the truck.
yeah, the truck was rocking side to side, and he'd go into deep water and he'd go real slowly because you didn't really know what we were getting into and kind of track your way through. But he did great. We got stuck once, I think, but other than that, we really didn't have any trouble. So, but the roads were awful because if it's not paved, it's rainy season, and they don't do anything about it until it's over. So why bother? So until it's over, it'll look like that or worse. They'll get worse and worse and worse. And then eventually, when it stops raining, they'll haul in it's kind of like clay or something and just kind of smooth it out a little bit. But it's not the best. So on Wednesday, 2 churches, and then she did the women's Bible study. And this is 2 different Solwezi churches. This is the first one, and that's the second one. You can see a difference between the two. Go back. Can you go back? So theirs is all plastered. They've plastered their walls. They've not. Theirs is still bare. But they've got doors on. They don't. This must be, I assume this is a newer building. So anyway, so that you can see what they're...
Well, this one was alongside the highway.
Yeah.
The highway. This one was back further in the bush. They're sitting on essentially hard lumps of
concrete. Well, it's concrete essentially.
concrete or dirt or something, yeah.
Some kind of built up bench. So
They're sitting on lawn chairs. The little plastic lawn chairs that you buy for $5 that you put in your backyard, that's what they use in a lot of the churches to sit in.
well, they're cheap, right?
Yeah.
And but yeah, that's so those are 2 churches in Solwezi. And you can see they're built kind of the same, but they're. And this is well, you can talk about this.
This is another juxtaposition. In the city, you get land from the government. In the country, it's still tribal. So the tribal leader had donated this to the Solwezi churches. And so I don't think they're talking about, like we would think a central site where there was a conference and everything. I think they're thinking central site like Lufwanyama had several churches, but they all worked together on the garden so that all the churches could benefit. So I think that they're thinking that kind of thing, someplace that we can have one set of tools and everybody can come and use them, or we can do things together. So they have to clear this. I don't think they have to put up walls because the tribe, it's a different system. So.
No walls there, but they will have to clear it. It's not cleared. They'll have to go through and again, they'll have to by hand cut out all the scrubby trees and dig up the roots and make it smooth. But that's the land that he gave them. Quite a large piece of land. So. And this is the church most people think of when they think of Zambia. This is kind of like the Milton of Zambia. So it's the Bushi Church. It's the go back. This building was built by Jeff Hazen and his father over the year that he was there. So
It is taller than this building inside.
it is.
It is huge.
Well, it's probably about
It's
the
at
same. least
the size,
about the same. I'd
and the
say.
rest of them are
It's
much smaller.
Very tall. The entryway is one height. The back is even taller, but it's very high. So and it's very efficient. Heat comes in and it goes out the top. So. But Jeff Hazen and his father designed and built the building, and so it's so this is the Bushi Church. This is the only church I think that's in Kitwe. This is the one church. They have a very large plot of land, and they've developed it, and they've been getting harassment from people around them because they want to know why they got so much land in the first place because they've gotten more than anybody else got. I think they might have been there first. So they got a very large plot of land. And so they had walls, but the government came in and said they weren't good enough walls. So they have to be taller and they have to be built better. So they've been tearing down sections and replacing them. And you'll see a couple of sections as we go along, I think. But they have to do the whole thing. And they have to, now because they have woodworking and sewing and all this stuff there, they want to put up gates, iron gates to lock, because there's nothing to stop people from coming in. And right now when we were there last time, there were just wooden doors inside the church, but now all the little side rooms in the church all have steel doors on them. They've welded steel doors and they're locked shut. But they would like to have it even more secure.
And they've painted since you guys have been there.
Yeah, they painted the building.
And there was like a pond in front because it wasn't flat. They've gotten
Gravel, actually.
gravel
and
to
they want to put
fill
more
it in.
gravel in. So they actually
So-
use pea gravel. They didn't even use clay. They've actually put down pea gravel in a pretty big area, and they're going to try to cover the whole area.
They
with-
put in more modern bathrooms since you were there.
Yeah, they have.
Modern bathrooms means a toilet without
Yeah.
a seat.
When
but
we
it's a
had,
toilet.
when we were there, it was pit toilets still, so you went in, there's like a hole in the ground. Now there are, I think, 2 or 3 stalls in a long building for men and 2 or 3 for women. But their plumbing's not the best, so the plumbing goes uphill, so the men's bathroom and the last one doesn't flush at all. So the closer you can get to the source, the better it flushes. But they have a big bucket of water there, and they have a scoop, and they just lift the lid and pour water in it, it flushes fine. So but
Better than a squatty
they're
potty.
sit-down toilets, they're real toilets, they're not pit toilets. Everywhere else we went to, there was a hole in the ground. They have actual toilets you can sit on that you flush like a standard American toilet, or British or whatever.
Right.
So anyway, that's the church. And they have a carpenter area, they have a sewing area. They've got, so those are their main focus for their vocational projects.
I think a lot of the older people in this church have jobs.
Yes.
The younger
so-
people do not, but the older, because it's a city and it's fairly modern, and they can walk to Bus Egg much easier than the people out in the
Yeah.
bush.
Clearly, that church has more money than the other churches, so you can go back. So this is the carpentry project. That's the carpentry shop. That's the new wall. The back of the shop is actually the wall. And so you can see the old walls. They're not high enough, and they're also starting to crumble a little bit. So the government told them they were no longer good enough. They'd have to build taller walls. And the walls have to be as tall as, you can't see it, but it's
Like 8 foot.
8 foot, 10 foot tall. It's pretty tall. So they want it pretty high. So they have to go through, and they've put in 2 full sections on their own, and they'll continue as they're able. But they're also looking for help with the sand, which is pretty costly. The man's working on a turned leg. They do not have a lathe. They take the wood to somebody else and pay them to turn it. But the orphanage has a very large industrial lathe, but it's missing parts. So we've been working with them to figure out what parts it's missing. We're going to supply the parts so they can get the lathe working. And if we do that, they'll allow the Seventh-day Baptist carpenters to come in and turn lathes, use a lathe to turn legs. So they can make their own legs. And it's a big machine that can make enough to send them out to Lufwanyama and Solwezi and Ndola as well. So, but right now those are turned by somebody else, so they bring them back and finish them. They were working on a bed frame. That was an order for
They
a bed
had
frame.
orders.
Yes, they had people who ordered furniture, and they were making a side table for someone who wanted a side table. It looks a little drunken because it wasn't glued together yet. They were still fitting it. So, but it's a mortise and tenon, and so they use the chisels. You can see them chopping out the mortise with the chisel. So.
And you took time at this church while I did the ladies' Bible study to show the young men how to sharpen tools, and gave them tool sharpening things. Part of what we sent in our $70 box was more tool sharpening things for the other locations. And then Quiston understands that the idea is one group gets trained and then they take their skill to the next group who can train the next group, who can train the next group. So theoretically, this is the church that has their act most together in terms of vocational projects and in terms of building, and then they can take those skills out to the churches further out.
We also sent videos of tool sharpening, so they can, because didn't have time to do as much as I wanted to do, so they could watch the videos that would show them how to sharpen tools. And we gave them sandpaper. So they use automotive sandpaper to sharpen tools. It makes it very sharp, and it's cheap. You
They
can
were
get it-
pretty amazed
you
at
can get
how
all-
easily
yeah,
things
so-
moved after the tools were sharpened.
Yeah, I talked about that last week in the sermon. They were astounded by, because they were using the tools out of the box. They're not sharp out of the box. So, but then they use them for a long time, they get dull. And you can see him, he's got a hammer, and he wasn't just tapping, he was bam, 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 and the wood splitting a little bit. So, but then I sharpened a tool for him, showed him, of course, it just goes through like butter. It's nothing to it then. So they were very excited by that idea. They were getting ready to sharpen a bunch of tools so they could use them more efficiently. But because they still had tools, they had clamp that they didn't know how to use. They couldn't figure out how it worked. It took me a minute to figure it out, but I did figure it out. So, and showed them how to use this, like a clamp with it. And then they had, the sharpening stones are still in the package. So they didn't even open them, they didn't know what they're for. So, but actually it worked out better because they didn't have any sharpening, honing oil. So it sort of wrecked the tools anyway. So it just worked out just as well. Because we brought sandpaper and you just use water for that. And you just spray it with water and run the tool on it. So, and then we brought them trainers so they could figure out what 25 degrees was, and then once you feel what 25 degrees is, you can do it without the trainer, and they can just sharpen them quickly using sandpaper and leather strop to polish them. So,
And then they have a room that they have all the sewing stuff in. I don't think they had treadle machines. I think theirs were all by hand. And they had one modern machine that was electric, which they think they want more of. I'm not sure they do because electric machines break much easier than the old ones. But we have a church in mind that has done sewing projects in the past, and so I think we're going to try to hook them up and see if they can figure out what would be useful for them.
yeah, if you can get the tool or the machine in Zambia, it's way cheaper to buy it in Zambia. We shipped the hand tools there because that's something you can't commonly find a plane or a set of chisels. It's not that easy to find those sort of things. So that stuff was shipped over, and it made sense to ship over. But a sewing machine, it makes much more sense just to buy it in Zambia and use it there because they don't have to worry about import duties and all that kind of stuff. We had to, when we brought the tools over, that came with the two other teams, and they each, 2 team members each, and they each brought one 50-pound box of tools. And then they actually were, at one point, were told they had to pay duty, but then they explained it was for the orphanage, and the orphanage is exempt, so they were able to get the tools in. But it's way easier just to buy stuff there.
So, and they make, I think, some clothes for themselves, and they make some clothes to sell, but they're very aware of the need to help people who are less fortunate than them. So one of the things they do, too, is do school uniforms for kids. So I assume that's part of the knit thing that they were doing earlier, was some of that stuff I assume they'll sell, but some of that stuff they'll give to people who can't buy their own uniforms. Because they don't have money to give to people, but they can give stuff that they've created, so.
And the lady on the left is watching because she was supposed to show us sewing too, but she couldn't see very well, and then she couldn't get the needle threaded, so.
That's
so
okay.
she gave up.
We sent them readers in the stuff that we sent them, so the ladies could see their needles.
It's pretty dark in there, but they can't, I mean, they have a metal door, so when they're done, they can lock it up. They couldn't leave that stuff out, it'd be stolen in a few minutes, so. But those are all ancient Singer sewing machines, and they still work like a charm, so we'll see what they do about electric stuff, but, so you can go to the next one, I think, so.
So this is the inside of the Bucci Church. This is the front, and this gives you an idea of the scope from the front to the back. So what did we do in Bucci? We did a ladies' Bible study. I did a ladies' Bible study while you helped with the tools, and then we did a group Bible study on believers, and then they had a service where you preached in the, afternoon, evening.
Yep. We were in Bucci for 2 days.
Yeah. So then the second day we were in Bucci was pretty much all conference-oriented things. People came in from all of the other churches for a variety of things.
Bucci is the name of the church. That's the actual neighborhood it's in. The city is Kitway. It's confusing, but this is Bucci, Kitway, like Berlin, New York. So we were in Kitway when we were at Bucci. So you can see what we did there, a series of conference-wide programs at the church in Kitway, and large group Bible study in the morning. Then we were part of the graduation of the first group of time students and the kickoff for the next group of time students. It's a very, very important program for them. They do a lot of training, and the men that our teams trained to begin with are now training the next group. And so they're sort of keeping that going by having the people who are train the next group and to move on to the next. We were also fortunate enough to be at the ordination service for Pastor Matthew, my Zambian twin. So, and he's the pastor of the Kitway Church, the Bucci Church. So we were there for his ordination, which is a pretty big deal. Let me tell you, they have a lot of dancing and singing and honoring. And he looked like he was going to go to his funeral, but he was very serious all the time. And he gets a collar at the end. He gets an ecclesiastical collar when he's ordained, and a Bible and some other things that they give as gifts. The church gives him as gifts. So
They don't have a lot of Bibles.
no, they don't. A lot of them don't read much anyway. So, so we didn't see many Bibles.
3 or 4 at each Bible study.
Yeah.
And limited people who could read them, I think. they're very expensive in their native language.
So, there's, so that's that. You can go to the next slide. You can talk about that slide.
We took, when people donated backpacks last summer, a bunch of them came from Vermont, and they were, some Vermont state thing was on all these Frisbees, so I put them aside to take them. We had to teach them how to use them. We weren't very successful. I think all but one of the times we gave them away, they ended up down someone's shirt quietly, and then the Frisbee was gone and nobody knew where it was because somebody had claimed it as their own. So
Actually, the game they ended up playing was throw the Frisbee and chase after it, and whoever gets it first gets to throw it next. So they
That
weren't
was
playing
fine.
catch. They were just whipping it, and then they all ran after it in a herd, and one of them would grab it
that
and
was
throw
fine.
it. So.
And the girl on the right came up to me after the first day and said, her grandmother spoke very good English. She spoke very good English, and she's like, my Frisbee, I do not know where it is. And I'm like, that's what happens with Frisbees. Sorry, I don't know where it is either. It's like, probably in some bush. I don't know.
Nice hat, though.
I think she was fishing for another, but she didn't get another one.
And this was the graduation of the Time students, which again is a very, very big deal for them. That's very excited and take it very, very seriously. And these men worked really, really hard. Men and women actually worked really hard to get through that program because it's not an easy program. It's not like a gimme program. They have to really study
And
hard.
almost
work
all,
hard,
what did
so-
he say, like 75% of the people that had gone through were in pastoral leadership or lay leadership. There were 3 women that went through. They were all brilliant. They all spoke English.
Yeah.
They all either acted as my interpreter at some point, or at some point during the Bible study stood up and went on a 5-minute rant about something from the scripture that was brilliant. And I'd be like, so my next point was this, but I'm pretty sure you already made it. And they'd be like, yes. I'm like, okay, we'll just skip that point. So they were definitely, the women that had been through were definitely taking leadership. And then this is the next group of Time students. There are 4 women, I think, on the end of that.
Yeah, and this is, credentials are very important in Zambia. So if they can get credentials like a Times graduation certificate, that means a lot, that they can open doors or they can't open the lights. Just like the uniforms the women wear. Ellen's wearing a skirt, and they have a top that goes with it, and if they want to go visit in the hospital or see
Go door
someone,
to door.
go door
yeah.
to door, they wear the uniform because that gives them more presence. So they have a light blue shirt with a white scarf, and then the skirt that they wear.
Right,
to,
the younger women, most of the younger women don't wear it, but most of the people that are older than 25 or 30 who are women wear the skirt. And if you're over probably 35 or 40, then you go for the whole thing. So,
So I was enjoying that. So and then you go to the next one. We're in case you're wondering, we're winding down. We're almost done. So, okay, yeah.
oh yeah,
Oh, it's training in ministry and extension, and so it trains people to be pastors and lay leaders, and you do everything from Bible interpretation to preaching to leadership skills to there's the Bible stuff is actually broken down into chunks like Old Testament, New Testament survey. It's a whole series of it's about 12 different things that you study, and then there's a book that goes with each one that you're supposed to read, but some of them had trouble with English, so what the team started doing was they would read ahead of time, go through the questions and answer the questions, and when you got there, you'd walk through the answers one by one with them as they went through so they could understand it better. So, but they
it's a way to get theological training to people who would never be able to go to
right.
seminary.
I don't know if there are even seminaries there.
No.
I don't know if there are in Zambia, but they get we would consider it like a Bible school level training. It's like if you went to Bible school. It's not easy, so and they go through a lot, and not everybody completes it, but the people who do, like Ellen was saying, about 3/4 of them go on to be very strong leaders in the church and plant other churches and mentor other people and teach other people. So it's a pretty important program, and it's been spreading. It was, I think Brazil was first, and then Zambia was second, and now they're doing it in Mozambique, and people have actually come from other countries to be. Last time we were there, I forgot what country the person came from, but it wasn't Zambia. It was a neighbor, maybe Congo. I mean, he came to the training because you can't get training there very well. So,
But they've taken over the training,
Yep.
and they're doing it on their own this next time through, which is exactly
yeah, that's how it's
the
supposed to
whole
work.
point of what we're trying
So,
to do.
Okay, go to the next one. Oh,
Well-
this is the ordination of Pastor, go back, actually. Ordination of Pastor Matthews of the Bucci Church. He is
The very tall, serious,
Yeah, third
very,
from the
very
right,
dark
so-
man.
Yep, so he was the.
He's in the middle. His wife and he are in the
Yeah,
middle.
so, but, yeah, he looked like they're gonna execute him. He's the whole time, so very
It's very
serious.
serious.
Very serious, walked very slowly. It was
We have
very big
we
deal.
have a video that the color is not good, but basically the entire length of the church, which is longer than the length of our church, surrounded by two groups of women dancing and clapping and singing, and then the guy who was ordaining him and somebody else. It's just giant, slow, 2 steps forward, 1 step back parade all the way down the whole church, with everybody clapping and singing and a couple of coats thrown down on the ground, and it was impressive.
It was a very big deal, so.
And then afterwards, Mr. Tactically Defensive got to, at the end of every service, you go out and you shake everybody's hands. And then they stop and everybody shakes everybody's hands all the way along. And in the middle of this service, everybody came up to congratulate Pastor Matthews. And he was up there because he'd helped with the ordination. So he got to shake everybody's hands in the entire church twice. He kept saying, "No, just don't think about it, smile,
It's
shake
okay,
the
so-
hands, it's fine."
I don't like touching people, so it was okay. So maybe John Gersel, he's Mr. Gladhander, but he wasn't there. So, but that's the ordination. It was very impressive, very it was an honor to be part of that. So, and then the last one is just thanking you. So we trained the women like Alan did good training for the women. We checked on all vocational projects. They've made huge strides. Did all kinds of stuff by themselves. It's amazing. We were able to do some important events for them at the conference. We checked on the time program and make sure that was running smoothly and figure out what they needed so that those books and things can get to them. And then we just tried to figure out for the Missionary Society what they actually needed. And so for each church, there was like one thing they really had to have. And so we brought that back and explained to them what they because they get bombarded with requests from all kinds of people. From they want this, they want that, they want this, they want that. And so we tried to discern what was most important. And so it really ended up being, for Ndola, it was sand. For Kitwe Bucci, it was sand. For Lufwanyama, it was the pump. And for Solwezi, they're trying to buy property. And they put down payments down, and a piece of property for big enough for a church costs about $1,000 US. And so they're looking for any kind of help they can get to continue making payments on that although they've been doing it themselves, but they'll appreciate any help they can get. So that's kind of what we communicate to the
And chickens for
missionaries.
Solwezi.
And chickens for Solwezi, because they were feeling left out because nobody gave them
Right,
anything. So,
and then we're kind of, woodworking is your
Yeah.
passion, so we're doing some of that, and then we're trying to find a church whose passion is sewing to do some support in that area.
yep. So we've been sending them power tools, actually, because they ran power to all their buildings, which wasn't there when we were there last time. And so they were ripping 8 or 10 foot long boards by hand with a saw. So you didn't see the bench, but it has a hole in the middle, and they put a board there, and they ripped that whole board little by little by little. So we before we left, we bought circular saws, because instead of taking 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, it's just right up through the middle and they're done. So, and power tools cost about the same as they do here. So $40 or $50, you got yourself a circular saw. $30, $40, you got a power drill. Yeah, so well, first of all, they run on 220, so, and they have the wrong kind of plug. So we could send them stuff, but if it ran on 220, they'd still have to use an adapter. But if you buy it there, and they have crazy brands you never heard of, like Black & Decker and Ryobi. So that's what they have. So we got quotes, and they were all, you're like, oh, I know that kind of, so.
Right, and the guy who's in charge of the conference very much understands you do what you can, and God will do the West.
Yeah.
And so, like, he knew that we were willing to pay for power tools, but we said to the guys, go get a quote, and if you can get it back to us before we leave, we'll leave the money with, and they did. They went out that night. We didn't finish until like 5 or 6 o'clock at night. They had a quote the next morning by 10 a.m. from like 2 different vendors on how much money it costs. So they put the time and effort in. So then we were able to leave the money for one of the saws.
Yeah.
And then sent money for the other 3 for the other places. But he very much understands that concept. People were coming for the conference program on Friday. and that's the other thing, is they have cell phones, so they're going to the bathroom in the ground, but they can call people on cell phones. So it's another, that odd kind of, like you could watch a cat video if you had the right kind of minutes in a porta potty, which is just odd to me, but you could do it. So they were calling him, asking for money to come to the conference, and he was consistently saying, you get yourself here, I'll give you the bus fare home. You get yourself here, I'll give you the bus fare home. Which a lot of people managed to get themselves there.
Either rode the bus or walked, one or
Right.
the other, but they got there, so. Yep. And I can also tell you that you can't afford Bosch power tools in Zambia either, so it's, because we got some quotes for that kind of stuff, we're like, not getting that, so. But Ryobi is very affordable, so is Black & Decker, so it was, yep. Hopefully it'll work out well. So are there any questions about anything we did, or, I know a lot of you supported us financially, I really appreciate that. It was, I mean, it meant a lot for us to be able to go and just to see what they've done and to be amazed by how far they've progressed with really not that much help, so.
Right. And all the stuff up here were gifts. The last, either when we got in Andola, they gave us gifts, but then the last day before we left, they all brought us gifts.
This is all stuff that's tourist shop stuff. This is not, they didn't make any of that. This is, they made
This
this
they
and
made.
this, so, but they didn't, that stuff is just stuff you'd buy in a trinket shop, so.
This I made so it was Americanized so it wouldn't fall down.
Any,
Yeah.
so-
I'm not really a tuck my skirt.
How large of a geographic area, all the churches you visit, how far?
Well, it's an hour to Ndola, so.
From Kitwe, and they
from
have good
Kitwe.
roads.
And they have good roads. That's on good roads. You're going between 60 and 80 kilometers an hour. So it's probably 60 kilometers or more from Ndola to Kitwe, and then it's probably
It took an
100
hour and a half to get to Lufanwama, but
Yep.
the roads were really bad.
Solways, it was 2.5.
So
And
it
that
was
was,
2.5.
he said, 200, a little over 200 kilometers. So about from Ndola to Solwezi, which would be the farthest out, you're probably looking at between 300 and 400 kilometers. So it's a lot. I mean, driving wise, it's not bad, but and there's buses that go everywhere. So if you want to go from Kitwe to Ndola and you've got 15 kwacha or whatever, you can jump on the bus and they'll take you there. And 15 kwacha is not a lot of money. So it's not expensive even, but so they do have
But you have
public
to walk. They
transportation.
walk everywhere.
But they walk everywhere because 15 kwacha is 15 kwacha. So they'll walk a lot of places, but it's not terrible. It's about an hour from one to the other, and then.
But
2.5
then
to
in
5
between,
hours.
so I think we decided to start looking at the churches as like counties. So like Solwezi actually has several churches in what we would probably call like a county.
In an
area.
so, yeah.
So it would take us like 20, 30 minutes to drive from one church to the next,
Partly because the roads are terrible.
partly
you
because
know,
the roads were
so-
terrible. But I think we definitely got the impression that there was a familial, like the people that were on one side of Solwezi district were probably related to the people that were 6 churches down on the other side of Solwezi district. So there's connections, there's reasons for them to stay connected, and there's motivations for, if these guys learn how to sharpen tools, to teach these guys learn how to sharpen tools, to learn these guys, because they're all kind of in it together.
Although Solwezi is a boom town, so because that's the
Yeah.
new center for copper, that's where the copper industry's kind of settled. And so that place you could feel when you got there, lots of energy, lots of things happening, lots of building and hustle and bustle. And so those churches are also growing quickly because they're bringing people in. So the one church that already owns property, one of the ones we saw, actually is trying to buy a second piece of property next door so they can expand because it's not big, the church is not big enough for the people they have. And they have more people coming all the time because that place is booming. So those churches were, I would say, growing the fastest. I don't think Kitwe changed much in size since we were there last. But Solwezi, I don't know if there was even much there when we were there last time. And now there's 6 churches. There's a lot of
Wow.
churches there, and they're all growing. It's kind of a boom area. So
And the orphanage churches where we stayed is run by a Christian organization, but they have a number of Seventh-day Baptists that work there. So a number of the orphanage young adults come to the Kitwe Church, and that orphanage practices taking kids and putting them in communities to serve those communities, but I think part of that point is, let's not dump 25 young adults in one community. Let's put 5 in this area where we know there's a church, have them support them, and maybe while they're there, they'll meet a husband and they'll settle and they'll become part of that community.
Or use their training, because
Right. So the idea is for them to serve those communities, but I think part of the other idea is to they don't have a community. They're all orphans. They've been raised in orphanages. So to give them back a community, because we did check on some on the way back.
Yeah.
One place, stopped and just see how they were doing.
And the orphanage teaches woodworking, because they have nice power tools and stuff. It's a little fancier than what we have in the churches we have. And they teach domestic arts. So they teach like housekeeping and cooking and stuff, because a lot of the young ladies learn how to be cooks or housekeepers, and they'll get a job doing that for somebody who can afford to have domestic help. So they'll train them how to do that. Last time John and I were there, they had 3 young ladies who would train to be domestics who took care of us. When Ellen and I got there, they said, "Oh, we see that your wife came, so there's food in the refrigerator." So, and that was that. She was expected to cook.
But that juxtaposition between the
because
old and the new all the time.
She's a girl. So, but yeah, but it was and they didn't do any house cleaning because she wanted to clean the house. She was right there. So, but but they do a lot of training there. It was very much appreciated being able to go, and I hope started to make a difference or made some connections so that some differences can be made. But they're certainly working hard, and they certainly, I think, have earned continued support by Seventh-day Baptists. They've put a lot of sweat equity into what they have. So, any other questions? Yeah.
Just for Brian, so he knows what to do with donations, if we just put down Zambian project.
Yep. If you put down, because right now all we're really collecting for is the pumps. So if you put down Zambia diesel pump or Zambia pump, he'll know what to do with it. So, and that money will actually all go to because it never ever goes directly to Zambia. It will all go to the Missionary Society, and then they'll collect it all and they'll transfer it to them. So, and then they have to supply receipts to the Missionary Society. So they actually bought a pump, or they actually bought saws or whatever. So they have their accountability as to the Missionary Society. So all the money goes. The Missionary Society doesn't keep any of it. It all goes to them, but it all goes to them so that the Missionary Society can then check up and say, yeah, we gave this much money for this. Where's the receipts? Can we see some pictures of you actually using the stuff or whatever? So they make sure that's actually, because they've had some trouble in the past with, not Zambia, but other churches maybe not being real clear where the money went. So they're pretty careful about that. So it all goes through them so that they can keep tabs on it. And we don't have to. It won't be our responsibility. It'll be the Missionary Society's problem. So, all right. So let's close with prayer, and we'll pray for Zambia, and then we'll be free to go. So, Lord, I thank you for the time that we were able to be in Zambia. I thank you for the people who are there who are working so hard. And Lord, I ask that you would just continue to encourage them as they do all that they can, and they trust you, Lord, to do the rest. And just bless us as we're able to help them. And Father, just above all else, encourage us, Father, remind us to pray for them as they do their work there. We pray again for the rain, that it would begin again, and that the crops would be safe. And we just ask that you would bless each person there who is working for your kingdom, and give them guidance and your protection. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Thank you for coming.